So just to jump into some of the things that stood out for me in the Marquette poll, it wasn't time to go through everything. But just remember, the margin of error is plus or minus 6.4%. So there's a lot of leeway. And the bottom line is that even with Tony Evers being at 25%, that's not a very big number when you consider that 35%, only 35% of the people responding to the poll said they would vote in the Democratic primary, and 21% of the people said that if the election were held today, they wouldn't vote. So there's 21% of the people out there that, as of right now, aren't going to vote. 41% of the people don't identify with any party. They consider themselves independent. And 34% of the people said they don't know who they're going to vote for. So Tony Evers having an 18-point lead with a margin of error of more than 6 points and all those unknowns, that really is meaningless. So at this point, it is still anybody's election to win or lose. And, just some of the things that Christine and I have discussed, and I'm glad Steve Carlson's on tonight because we had a good email exchange as well, is I think the easiest way to say this is that this campaign, Mike's campaign, that a lot of people and some who are on the call tonight have pushed him to run, is going to be won or lost based on how many people this campaign can come face to face with, period. Because what happens is when people have direct contact with the campaign, face to face, in person, with somebody who is a surrogate of the campaign or believes the same thing that Mike does, or Mike himself, and they get to know him and what the campaign represents, they will vote for Mike. And simply put, social media is fine, and letters to the editor are fine, and signs on overpasses are fine, but this campaign is going to be won or lost in the trenches. And I'm going to open up screen sharing because I actually have, there's actually a lot of good research that backs up my theory. And hopefully you can all see a slide that says winning means getting out there. So first of all, we have to understand how people make political decisions. And this is based on Drew Weston's research, and it's been verified a lot over the years. But numbers 1, 2, and 3 on how people make political decisions as to who they're going to vote for is based on their feelings. Feelings about the party, feelings about the candidate. And what we're seeing in the Marquette poll confirms that, because people are responding to who they think they know. So if I believe the number was 63% of the people said they don't know enough about Mike to make a decision, that means that they don't have feelings that they can make their decision on about Mike. And what's important about that is that swing voters respond to positive emotional messages for a candidate. Obviously, Mike's campaign is hitting on those positive emotional messages and ideas that basically underline the policies and issues we care about. So that bodes well for over the next month and a half, getting some of those 34%, or a lot of those 34% of the people to vote for Mike, but they have to get to know him. So how do they get to know him? Well, guess what? The sources people trust in making these decisions are not TV ads. In fact, 53% of the people in these surveys have no trust at all for TV ads. And in fact, campaign ads fare much worse. It's actually closer to 60 to 62% of people don't trust campaign ads. 9 out of 10 people will trust what they hear from people they know. Friends, neighbors, coworkers, family members, and that data has held true since 1940. 90% of the people make decisions based on recommendations from people they know, people that they have come into contact with and have had person-to-person conversations about political decisions. So how do these recommendations happen? This goes even deeper into what I was saying about social media and letters to the editor and things like that. 92% of the recommendations that motivate people to vote for one person or the other, they happen offline. They don't happen on Facebook. They don't happen on Twitter. They don't happen from reading a letter to the editor or seeing a sign. They happen offline, face-to-face, by phone, by email or text directly from people they know and trust. Only 2% are convinced by social media. So what does that say that the strategy for the campaign needs to be for the next month and a half? It means that connection and trust building are key. Visibility is key. And the way to make those trustworthy, effective connections is in person. And as you can see from the graph there, the top 2 influencing strategies to drive vote share is canvassing, number 1. Why? Because it's initiating a one-on-one connection building contact that initiates a discussion on values. And lawn signs are second because they act as a tacit endorsement from trusted friends or neighbors. Plus, those yard signs are accepted and received through those personal connections, through those personal contacts. So, bottom line here is, how does this campaign win? It's going to be through direct outreach and visibility. And, you know, I understand that people spend a lot of times doing signs and, you know, being creative that way, and it's wonderful, and it starts the visibility process, but the follow through at this point has got to be with direct outreach and visibility. And that is everywhere, because I just started looking at some of the more detail of the poll, and it's not an urban problem, it's not a rural problem, it is just an overall lack of connection, lack of visibility, and lack of knowledge, basically the entire field. So at this point, it is really a race. It is a race to make those voter connections, and you know, there's going to be some candidates that are going to drop a lot of money in the next month because they've been putting it in the bank, and they've been buying TV time for this last stretch. And TV ads, people don't trust. So, you know, my message kind of in the strategy part of tonight is, you know, for us to get out there and start making those personal connections with people and doing the groundwork, getting that done in advance of TV ads dropping will, you know, cement that 34% of the don't know vote right now to start moving into Mike's corner. And underlying all this is the idea of promoting and communicating the values of the campaign, which are out there all the time. That's what Mike's talking about all the time, and staying focused on a pro-campaign, pro-candidate messaging strategy. You know, hopefully some of you have noticed, you know, there's been a little back and forth between Malin Mitchell and Paul Soglin and some other folks, you know, and I think part of it is let them fight it out and really start staying on message, to build, the positive vision that Mike's got going right now. Because, I think getting deeper into the Marquette poll today is going to show that what people are looking for, is somebody to believe in. And they're just waiting to be inspired by someone to believe in. And I think this campaign has a great opportunity to be that campaign, to create that kind of a connection. So with that being said, that is kind of the strategy, motivation to really focus on the idea of getting out there. There's a canvassing strategy that's been put into place, and I would argue that even if you're a little uncomfortable with the technology, that you can get out there and do it. Use the script, use the ideas, which we're going to look at here in a little bit, and use those ideas to go out there and start talking to people, and being a surrogate for the campaign. So before we move on, any questions about anything that I just talked about?
I have one, and this was just back to the percentages. What was the 35% they wouldn't vote in the Democrat?
Oh, sure. Is this Katie?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So it was of the people that responded to the poll, the 3 days of the poll, it was conducted earlier this week. 21% said they would not vote in the primary. So that's a snapshot in time. So
what was the one before that?
34% don't know who they're going to vote for.
That's the one. Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Right. So you have, in terms of the part, and this is important too, because clearly people are not wanting to identify with either party. The party ID is in the high 20s, low 30s, given the margin of error, but 41% of the people don't identify with either party. That's a huge number. And here's Mike running as an independent, running as a Democrat, but independent of the party. So there's a lot of opportunity there. Only 35% said they would vote in the Democratic primary.
And I just like to make a comment in the organizing meetings and stuff like that we've been having, and especially the canvassing training meetings we've been talking about, with so many wonderful candidates, we thought the turnout would be really high. But what some people are starting to suggest, and I don't know, it could be one extreme or the other, that because people have so many choices and that you hear so many people say, well, it seems like anybody would be better than Walker, all of that jazz. What's actually happening is that people are too overwhelmed with the choices, and they're going to let someone who knows more or who's better informed be the one to make the decision, which means that they won't go out and vote in the primary. Which we might even have a lower anticipated turnout than we were looking for. So again, the name of the game is turning people out at the end of the day.
Yeah. And I would argue that it's turning people on. I think one of the reasons that might be playing out is that partially because so many people don't know the candidates yet. And look, let's face it, people aren't going to, we've got to go to them. That's on us. That's our responsibility, is to go out there and connect with them. Don't expect them to go, to go seeking and trying to find, that 35% that say they're going to vote in the Dem primary, for Democrats, yeah, you should be able to just trip over a log and get that number. it's getting that 34% of the people that don't know, and then the majority of those 41% independents to vote for you. So that's where we have to do the inspiration job. And I would argue, or I would agree with Christine, that if somebody doesn't go out and inspire these people, yeah, we're going to see low turnout, especially because it's an August primary. So if people aren't turned on, they're going to stay home. So yeah, I agree. So should we move on to kind of how to talk to people? Okay. Since Christine's muted, I'll take that as a yes. Okay, she's nodding yes. Okay. Okay, here we go. So this is basically what I've been sharing with people at the canvassing workshops that we've been at. And here's what I want to point out is that one of the biggest things that Mike has going for him is that the issue most people identify with him is the getting money out of politics, is cutting out that cancer, rooting out that cancer. And the good thing about that is that when people start thinking about that, they think about caring about democracy and caring about how democracy affects them and other people. So it automatically starts them thinking in terms of empathy and caring for others and what that means to democracy. So we already have a leg up in that respect. But I want to point out that a positive progressive message is important because it's what all great campaigns and movements have in common, is that they inspire people. As I said, if we don't get out there and inspire people, then that's on us. And I think that's what every campaign should look to do. And it's consistent with research that what inspires people to act and what motivates them to get out and act is an authentic connection with people and a positive, hopeful vision for the future. And that's what will inspire people. And here's a couple examples of that. FDR, the four freedoms were a very positive vision for the future and what freedom looked like in the progressive worldview. And then Martin Luther King Jr., the idea that people will live by the golden rule, do unto others as they would have others do unto them. Very positive progressive worldview. And I would argue that Bernie had a very positive message. This future to believe in idea was a very positive, hopeful vision for the future. And what's important about that is that those values of caring for others and acting in other people's best interests, not just in our own interest, is what defines and unites us as a campaign, right? Because every policy, every idea that you believe in as a progressive, and we can go right down the list: healthcare for everyone, debt-free education, ending the corrupting influence of money in politics, is based on our core value of empathy. If we didn't care about other people's well-being, we wouldn't care for these issues the way we do, right? And it's the direct counter to what conservatives believe. And conservatives believe every man for themselves. And when I say man in the conservative frame, I mean man, because they are built on a hierarchy that puts men over women. So that literally for them means every man for himself. And this campaign, very briefly, is about a positive progressive vision. And when you've heard Mike speak, all of these inspiring, speeches that he's made at the convention, at forums and things like that, he's evoking these ideas. And I just thought it would be useful to go through how these simple campaign messages evoke progressive values and ideas so that when you talk to people about them, we evoke meaning that you already believe in, but maybe you haven't quite made it conscious yet. So that people-powered basically means that money and greed are corrupting influence on the idea of democracy, where people act through the government to provide what's necessary for freedom and prosperity. People power is a vision for a better future. That's why people-powered evokes values. Principle over party evokes progressive values because it's our belief that our leaders ought to be guided by their principles and values. And you look at the Marquette poll and how few people identify with a party, that speaks volumes to this the value principle over party. Because people understand that blind adherence to a party makes them subject to corrupting influence. And we've seen that play out, and people's trust has been betrayed in the political system. So those 41% of independents and 34% of people who don't know who they're going to vote for, as Mike would say, they're looking for a home. So it's up to us to go out and connect with them and tell them that they have a home and they can help be part of a better future. That's what principle over party means. And then lately, this dare to dream idea has become repeated more and more. And that's critically important because we talk about the betrayal of political parties. And we talk about the betrayal of politicians and how people check out of our democracy. Christine just talked about people maybe not being excited about the primary. Well, maybe they're not excited about the primary because they've stopped daring to dream that a better future is possible, right? So if we go show people that that better future is possible through people power and putting principle over party, that it's okay for them to dare to dream again, and they should. And again, the idea of finding a political home. So that's how all of these canvassing thinking points that are in the introduction, when you go to initially talk to people, that's why they're written the way they are. And while they may seem overly simplistic, they're overly simplistic for a reason. It's because you want to find common ground to connect with people. So just for example, if you go to the door and you say, you introduce yourself and you say, I've been asking people about this year's election for governor. Can I ask you some questions? And then these questions are thinking points. And of course, as you've probably seen, they answer themselves, and it's based on our values. So what this does is, while it seems simple to you, to the person that you're trying to initiate a conversation with, you're actually now finding common values to connect with, and then have the important discussions about issues they care about, right? So if you ask somebody, do you believe the person you elect should serve all the people or just those that make huge campaign contributions? If you look at that Marquette poll, even Republicans and all the independents are going to say, well, they should serve all the people. You've now made a connection with them based on our values. Do you believe the person you should elect should do what's best for the people or what's best for their own party, right? Principle over party. Again, seems like a simple answer to you, but you've now made a connection with them when they answer, well, they should do what's best for the people. You've now just made a connection based on your values that say we should have principles over party. And then finally, the idea of a campaign powered by lots of people or big money. And you can expand on that if you want, but it's the same reaction. Of course, most people are going to say, we want to see lots of people power a campaign, not big money, because that comes with strings. Now you've made another connection based on values. So now when you try to connect with Mike, the candidate, you've already made a connection on values. So when you ask the question, do you know which of the candidates has worked on these issues, written a book, built a movement, right? Sorry, I got ahead there. The question is a values-based answer. right? It's Mike McCabe because he cares about the same values that you do. So now you've made a connection in values, and now the idea of Dare to Dream, now you can have a discussion with people on the issues they care about based on the values that you both agreed on. And the whole idea here is, while it may seem simplistic to you, and some people have used the word that it's a little pandering or I don't remember what the word was, but it actually allows you to make a very basic connection with those people on something you agree with that's based on values. And then you can talk about issues based on those common values. And whether or not you're comfortable with the technology of using the phone for the canvassing, you can still go out and make those connections with people and drop the lit and connect with them with Mike McCabe. And bottom line is, the more people we do that with, the better chance we have of winning. And I think the Marquette poll showed that it's anybody's game to win at this point. And I think for us, it's a matter of, getting out there and connecting with people. So plenty of time for questions and comments and discussion. And if anybody has ideas, please. I'm going to close this screen share and I can come back to any slide you want. Christine, I'll email you these too. You can share them out to the group.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone, just in case you didn't read the chat box, I've muted most people because we were getting a little feedback and I wasn't sure where it's coming from. So if you want to ask a question, just make sure that you're unmuted or type it in the chat box and I can read it out loud for the group.
Wow, I must have really inspired people. Considering how many people are on and there's no question. Holy smokes. Somebody's got to have something. Come on.
No?
Or I guess, has anybody had experiences that they want to share with talking to people about the campaign? I mean, is there something that's worked, something that hasn't worked? Is
Scott,
there...
Mark Newman asked, what about contacts at public events? Relative to door to door.
Mm-hmm. So there's more slides in that body of research that I pulled those from. So when you have public events where there's a lot of people, where you can make contacts with people, if you do quality connections with people, asking the questions, connecting the values, and getting Mike's name out there, his face out there, then yes, that works. We're talking about any kind of personal contact, and it can also be by phone, it can be email for people public events, things like that. Yes, absolutely. Anywhere you can do saturated contacts with people, obviously, like outside of Summerfest, if you got 20 people at Summerfest and they can all hit 50 to 100 people, then that's quality time.
Hi, we're up here in Pearson St. Croix County. We're planning to do a lot of that at local festivals and booster days. So we made up something. We're making bags out of blue jeans that will sling over your shoulder like a newspaper bag. And we've got a handout it's like a fridge card to remind people to vote. So I'm going to hold it up in front of me. Here's the first part of it, that it's a $20 bill and it's got Mike's picture on it and it's got in big red letters, vote August 14th for Mike, vote for Mike. The back of it has all those things that you just had on your slides under three.
Oh, that's awesome.
Put big money out of politics, put principle over party, and make life better for all. At the bottom, I put his quote, "That's time for a change. The political system is failing us." That quote. So, this is like a crib note too. When you're out talking, you can keep reminding yourself of what you're trying to say. You give it to someone, they remember what you just said, and they take it home and put it on their fridge, and they remember to vote in the primary, and they think, "Oh, I could go vote for that guy." And then you call them the night before and harass them. Well, that's our plan up here in the Northland.
Katie, are you willing to share that with all of us?
And I can send this, I'll send this to Christine. It's a PDF, I got it printed. I had 3,000 printed today for $55. It's not horribly expensive either. So
it's a great idea. We used the $1 million bill for United to amend, and
that's exactly what we got.
Attention.
Yep.
And they laugh.
And the money catches people's attention, and it really is Mike's number one issue. It's what separates him from the pack, as far as I'm concerned. So we went with this.
Yeah, and to Sonia's point, she just typed it into the chat. Yeah, I mean, we don't have time to cover every issue, but Mike has made a lot of powerful statements about the environment, and yes, obviously, if you care for other people, you care about the environment and how we are stewards and protect the environment and each other. Yes, absolutely. The idea, you won't get clean water from dirty politics. That's absolutely.
Under the heading, we took a lot of liberty with this, and under the heading "Make Life Better for All," we have commit to climate action plan and clean energy development, because we were concerned that wasn't being mentioned enough too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are great. And just to underscore also, I mean, the yard sign thing yard signs are really big. Don't underestimate the power of yard signs. So if you can get people to commit to yard signs, one way or the other, whether it's through a follow-up visit or right away, yard signs are really good. Hi, Jeff. Hi, Jeff.
Hi. I don't like people coming to my door canvassing. Well, I don't know whether they're canvassing or not, but when somebody comes unannounced, I just don't like it. And I think that inhibits me from going around, but I can talk to people in a crowd. I can walk to people at Juneteenth Day. We just walked up and started talking to people. So I think it's a waste of my time to canvass. If I had so much time to devote, I think I'm more effective in a different interface. But I know you need to have the canvassing done, so I'm kind of I feel obliged to kind of help out with the canvassing, although my time would be better spent. I'm willing to do it, but I think I'm empathetic for the people who live there.
Mark Newman asked a similar question. He, along with this doors question, he asked, when you go to so many doors and so many people aren't home, is it really worth our time to be going to doors? So we can kind of combine those two together, I suppose.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, it's just for example, in our neighborhood here, there were some kids going around for Wisconsin Environment, and it was like 3:00 in the afternoon. And, how many people are going to be home at 3:00 in the afternoon? I mean, so part of it is timing. Yeah, you're not going to get everybody, but I would say, Jeff, to your point, and to Mark's, yes, the well-attended festivals and things like that are a great opportunity to get a lot of people in one place at one time, and well, that's good too. I'm not saying it has to be one or the other. A combination of both.
Dimitri thought that the value of canvassing was not so much getting not so much persuading people to vote, but to gather data for use later.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a combination of things, right? Because I mean, you want the data in terms of who's a likely voter and who's a likely Mike voter, and that's important data to have, but very much so, canvassing is about voter contact and exposure about the candidate. And the best research is you've got about 5 to 6 seconds to make an impression and a connection, which is why those first couple questions in the introduction are very simple, and it asks a very simple question to start that connection. And notice it does not, you don't identify yourself as a Democrat or a Republican or with any party. It's you are part of the community. You want to have a discussion with people, and then you ask them something about their values. So yeah, it's definitely about making contact with voters. Look, the research on persuasion is very iffy. If I'm going to be really honest, there really is no good research on persuasion because they tend to be tainted and biased by the people conducting the studies and the groups that they are working for that have a particular goal in doing the study. So, and there's really not a lot of good research on persuasion and canvassing, but it's consistently shown to have an impact on people in terms of who actually goes and votes. So if it's about getting somebody out to vote and then being able to make a connection with people with a powerful message that hits their values, then you've got a much better chance of having that person go and vote for you than anybody else. So Christine, you can answer the yard sign question.
I think Katie got it.
Yep, sorry, I didn't see that. Yep.
No, that's okay.
Okay.
Mark Newman just asked, if someone were to wear a name tag or say a campaign shirt or something clearly identifying who they are, would that help to ease people's misgivings of strangers?
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, the people-powered shirts are great. It's our positive message, and it doesn't say Democrat or Republican. It just says, it says people-powered, and it's McCabe for governor on the back. And if you have a name tag, why not? Yeah, for sure. And then especially if you can say, I live in the community, then it's even better, because then they say, oh, well, here's somebody who lives. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I looked at canvassing as a wonderful opportunity to connect with people, that you're making their first contact. When I went out getting signatures, no one had ever heard of Mike McCabe. And people, after I left their door, they liked me and they liked him because you're really nice and friendly. That's going to stick with them. And all we have to do is keep reinforcing that message. And even though like those highway signs, I had one person said, that's just a goofy use of volunteer time. I said, if you stand there and wave and look friendly, people are going to have a positive reaction to that. And, they're going to
Yep.
And with the canvassing, it was my understanding, and I might be wrong, that one of the things that data that we gather would be used for is to target mailings. And so when you have a group of people that are interested in education, instead of that scattershot, which is very expensive, to do targeted mailings for our poor little shoestring campaign here, it will be really helpful. And that's one of the ways it's really going to help the campaign save money and target voters. So it's worked. My opinion.
Yeah. And also it's, when Mike wins the primary, then it's good data for, in a short amount of time, getting out the vote in November. So.
This is Steve Carlson from Trigo.
Hey, Steve.
I'm not trying to pull rank or anything, but I have actually knocked on thousands of doors in Northwest Wisconsin over the last 6 years on a number of different issue campaigns and political campaigns. And I can understand how people might wonder, given the time it takes to canvass, is it worth it to get out to knock on a door and win over a voter? But I think the way to think about canvassing is not as trying to win over a single vote with a single conversation, is what you're looking for in a given neighborhood, low-income area, walk list, if you've got them, are kind of what we used to call in the SEIU live wires, who are obviously kind of gatekeepers in their communities. You'll know them by the number of people they know once you get into a more in-depth conversation. sort of a kind of a charisma and engagement. And that's a cue for the conversation to go a little deeper about how many people they know, what they're willing to do, like put a yard sign in their yard, put up a Facebook post, send out an email, talk to family and friends. And so for every 8 or 9 people who either are uninterested or take a piece of lit and thank you, for it and so forth, you're looking for those 1 or 2 out of that 10 who can potentially light up dozens, if not even, 100 or more voters. So you're looking for kind of a network in the form of like branch lightning. I think even in the digital age, there's no substitute for face-to-face contact. And even if somebody comes home who wasn't there when you knocked on the door and they find a piece of lit in their door, they know a person put it there. It didn't come by mail. They didn't get an email. They didn't see a TV ad they're likely to mute. They know a person walked that neighborhood, cared enough to knock on their door. And it's those kinds of nuances of the human experience that can either light up a campaign or, frankly, like in the case of Hillary Clinton and all the money she spent on TV ads and really powerfully negative TV ads, can turn off people. So I'm a big fan of canvassing, lit dropping. And if you do it right, if you pair people up and somebody at a door is talking to you and over your shoulder they see somebody across the street talking to a neighbor, it gives a sense that something's happening. With 8 weeks to go until election day, and I won't go on much longer, with the volume of voters Mike needs to win the primary, long conversations at the door are not in order. And again, in the SEIU, they train us to create kind of a sense of urgency, but seeing 2 or 3 people walk in a neighborhood, chatting up quick, pointing people to a website where they can find out more, and then moving on quickly and going to the next door, I think at this point it's crucial to Mike's chances of winning on August 14th.
I agree with everything you said, Steve, and I'm just going to add on to just expand a little bit on the idea of face-to-face. For this campaign can be more effective than every other campaign this Democratic cycle face-to-face, because the people are real people who are in the communities that they care about. It's not relying on paid staff or interns or people recruited from outside of the state or the community. You are people that all live and care about the places you live, and that will be perceived by the people you were talking to. And don't underestimate the power of that unconscious connection you'll have with people. And Katie said before, it's a chance to connect with your neighbors and people in your communities. And I think, Steve, that well said. And also the research shows, the best research shows that there's no substitute for face-to-face positive contact with people. And yes, Hillary Clinton shot herself in the foot with all the negative ads and the "I'm not Trump." And part of the problem is that the Democratic National Committee, they don't want to admit it. They're really trying to rationalize things, but everything that happened that for Hillary to lose the Electoral College like she did was 100% emotional, and they blew it. So this is our opportunity to not blow it and get out there in 8 weeks and, get the word out.
Okay, everyone, we've got like 10 minutes left. So if anyone has a question they've just been holding back to the end, it's getting fastly approaching the end. So speak now.
Yeah, I would like to, I saw Mark Newman's comment on the site about people-powered billboards and over bridges and said he didn't feel like it's been a waste of time. I certainly don't think stuff like that is a waste of time, but it isn't as intimate a contact as dropping a piece of lit in somebody's door, having a quick conversation, or somebody seeing you walk your neighborhood. I absolutely think that getting Mike's name out there is, that's a good way to get Mike's name out there, but human interaction and motivation comes in degrees incrementally in terms of relationship. And again, the nuances of walking a neighborhood, knocking on doors, talking to people who are available, that leaves an impression on people that they don't forget, and hopefully they'll remember on primary day.
I was going to say the signs and, you know, the people powered signs and everything. I mean, think of those as this campaign's TV ads. It's an icebreaker. And with people up there holding the signs, it says, hey, we're here in the community. Here we are. This is us. This is our candidate. That's the icebreaker. So, you know, you can't just have an icebreaker and expect to meet people. You got to get out there and take the leap of faith and get out there and say, hey, maybe you saw, and maybe that's a good icebreaker. Maybe you saw us holding a billboard, or, you know, holding a sign up, you know, over the, you know, whatever bridge it is, or, you know, yeah, great icebreakers and things like that. And good introduction to the fact that the campaign's in the community.
Hey, Scott, about the poll, this is Jeff, about the poll, from the way I read it, Mike has the best chance against Walker of the other candidates. He's the margin is the least.
And well, I believe with the exception of Matt Flynn and Kelda Royce and Malin Mitchell, I think all the other candidates were within the margin of error. So it's a virtual tie for everybody else.
When you look at the number of people who they polled, which is I think 800, if you take away the 30% who don't know and the others aren't going to vote, what did they get? 100 votes for Evers? I mean, what number could it have been? It's meaningless.
Yeah, right. That was my point at the outset, was that, you know, with this many candidates and the fact that there's so many people undecided and with such a small sample, you know, it's literally anybody's race.
Yeah, except there are many voters who say, I want to vote for the person who can win. And if you remove the margin of error, Mike is the one who can win.
Well, yeah. Okay.
I mean, we're trying to, if you want to have a positive message, that is the positive message. No one has done better against Walker in this poll.
Right. Well, yes. Yes and no. No, because that's not what the poll is saying. The poll is saying that it's a tie, that it's a statistical tie. So there's nobody that is currently beating Walker, and Walker is currently unable to beat anyone with the sample they have and the people that responded. But I think our attitude should be that, yes, Mike can beat Walker because he is the one candidate that has the message and the vision that can counter Walker's, that gives people a better future than what Walker offers them.
What I take away from that poll is the reason there's a difference between Walker and Mike is because some people would rather vote for Walker over some of the other people, the people that have a negative. There is not a negative with Mike. And so people who otherwise would not have voted for the other candidates and would have voted for Walker would vote for Mike. Is that what less of a negative?
Yeah, I think it has more to do with kind of the unconscious values that each person represents. I think that when people are asked to make that decision, the ones who do make that decision are weighing the values that Walker represents and the values Mike represents. I think that's kind of where that's because not enough people know enough about Mike to make that decision. Right? 63% of the people don't know enough about Mike to cast a vote for him at this time. So when they're asked to weigh the two, they're kind of going on gut feeling.
Well, if they didn't know, I would imagine they would not ask the person then, who would you vote for? There was no point. They should remove that question, wouldn't you think? I don't know what their method is.
That's a methodology question you could ask Charles Franklin at some point. They always do the head-to-head because it gets good press. So, but I would say, the message of the campaign should be, yeah, Mike can win, because he's the one candidate. He's obviously is head and shoulders above the rest in terms of what his vision is. The response Malin Mitchell had at the end of his remarks, where Malin said, I was clapping for you, and that's priceless. And that's the type of positive message that we should be putting out. And I think
that's the best. I think it's the best speech Mike has given.
Yeah,
I
think it's premature to start saying that. I think it's a mistake for Tony Evers to be saying, I'm the one that can beat Scott Walker because I beat cancer and I've won a statewide election. I think it's a mistake for him to say that. For a lot of reasons. And I think it'd be a mistake for Mike to use this poll to say, I'm the one that can beat Scott Walker because the Marquette poll says I can. I think that would be a mistake. It's putting the cart before the horse, and it's not communicating what Mike is about. And right now, we know that when people find out what Mike is about, they'll vote for him.
Can I say one last thing, Scott?
You can say as many last things in 4 minutes as you want.
Well, I'll be brief. It's not my long suit, but I'm going to really try. I think, to sum up quickly, the Marquette poll shows the McCabe campaign, there's good news and there's bad news. The good news is if enough voters hear about Mike, he's the one that's going to win compared to the rest of the candidates. The bad news is it's not clear that we can reach those voters between now and August 14th to get to that mark. Mm-hmm. That's actually a very good spot to be in. Mm-hmm. Because I don't have any doubt, again, that Mike's message, what he stands for, who he is, and the people he's surrounded himself with are appealing to a broad range of Wisconsinites, urban, rural, people of color, independents, maybe even Trump voters who would have voted for Bernie had he been on the ballot. But it's not clear at this point that he hasn't moved the needle much since the poll in March, which tells me that what we've been doing is not enough to win on August 14th. So we have to ratchet it up to the next level of voter outreach. And that can be dropping lit at gatherings, sponsored Facebook ads. I would argue for other forms of voter contact that aren't TV. And frankly, we need to raise some money to do that. So my wife and I have contributed another $200 on top of the $400 we've already contributed. And for whatever it's worth, I'll put out a call on Facebook for people to dig deep and chip in. I know there isn't anybody in the state, if they wanted to, couldn't give $25 or $50 to the McCabe campaign. They just have to want to. But good news, Mike can win. Bad news right now with what we're doing, it doesn't look good. So we really need to ratchet it up over the next 8 weeks.
And just kind of building on Steve's point, and we talked about this a little bit here and there, it's not so much this versus this versus this. What we should really be thinking about is how can we effectively build on each one of these actions? So, for example, I've used this example a couple times with people. When I was running for assembly, you know, I didn't have much name recognition in the area. So what we would do is we'd do people power billboards in the community on, say, like a Wednesday or a Thursday. My cat's going crazy. And then we'd canvass that area that weekend. So for example, the more rural districts, if you're gonna go canvass a little town for, you know, that weekend, if that's where your group is canvassing, then maybe on Thursday or Friday when people are coming home from work, you've got your billboards out there at the front of the town as everybody comes in. So then when you knock on the doors on Saturday, people say, oh yeah, I saw that name. And you're building on those repeated exposures to Mike's name, Mike's message. So we don't, you know, the goal here is not to work harder, but to work smarter, right? And to get the biggest bang for our buck. And I really think that we can do that when we combine all of these things effectively, and that's building on each interaction.
Wanted to add that I can send you the PDF of those little things we're handing out. So if anybody wants one, they can get one. And throw in that when I ran for mayor in River Falls, there was a long process in a primary, and I beat out everybody. And the night before the election, we put up hundreds of pink signs on stakes that said Katie for mayor, and they just all popped up overnight before the election. And so it reminded people on their way to the polls, and it looked like, gosh, the whole town supports you. And I won by a handy margin, defeating the sitting mayor, former mayor, and the president of the city council. You know, so it does work.
Yeah.
It's funny things work like that. You never know. So keep at it, I say.
Great example, Katie. I think I can definitely get that for you. You hopefully have my email address. If you don't, it's Christine with a CH at governorbluejeans.com. Can you all hear me okay? I said my internet was a little, okay. So feel free to send an email or anything. This is being recorded, and we will pass it out to everyone who couldn't be here tonight, or, you know, anyone that's interested. I think that this was a great discussion. Thank you all for joining. We've got a lot of people on tonight. That's great.
I'm putting my email in the chat box too.
Oh, good. Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, and you know, there's a lot of people on tonight, and I would just encourage you, you know, to just get this message out to people. I mean, Mike took a leap of faith and set his life aside, you know, to run because people wanted him to run. And now it's time for us to take a leap of faith. And, you know, for some people, it's going to be outside of their comfort zone to get out there. But I think once you do it and you know, talk about the things you care about, I think you're going to find that even if it's someone who is maybe thinking of voting for somebody else, or a Republican or a Scott Walker supporter, you may be very surprised that you may find common ground to have a discussion about money in politics or something. And we're just planting an idea, you know, to Steve's point. We're getting out there, we're planting an idea with people, and you may find, you know, one person in a community that can reach another 100 or 1,000 people, you know, through their reach. And that's what this campaign needs. We need to start having these kind of, you know, viral moments like this, contacting people and all that kind of thing. So, yeah.
Okay, I think we're going to call it an evening then. Just another plug for the future. Every third Wednesday we do this. So if you enjoyed this meeting, mark it on your calendar. A month from today, we'll be doing this again. And once again, this video will be available starting tomorrow. It takes a little bit for it to go. And yeah, thanks so much, everyone. We got some great news today with the Marquette poll, and I also went to another poll. It was an issue poll, but it shows that our issues in our campaign and the things we're talking about are exactly what everybody was on people's minds. So I know we're on the right track. I can feel it. And I just thank you all for giving up your time and everything that you do to make this possible. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Christine.
Thanks, Scott, Christine, everybody.
Okay, everybody, have a great night.